Well, hello again out there. I'm T.M. Brown, and I'm excited to begin this journey with you. I'll be reading from my first book, A Life Not My Own. I'll share my readings with you periodically through this channel. You may decide that you'd like to read along with me, and that would be really cool. So feel free to grab a copy of my book via www.authortmbrown.com. My intent is to share more than what you'd experience if you read the book alone. And we started with the very first page, and my plan is for us to walk our way through the book. I'm going to try really hard to tell you what page we're on as we begin each episode. So today's episode is chapter 2, and it's called Betty. So I'll begin to read from the chapter. As a child, when Betty left us alone in the house for days, Mac and I turned to the television. We watched TV before we ate the breakfast that I attempted to make for us prior to going to school. We watched TV when we returned from school, and we watched TV until we fell asleep. I learned a lot from the tube. I learned that there was a world out there that was very different from where I was. I saw people in different places, speaking different languages, families with both parents living under the same roof, people who cared for one another, and most importantly, children who got lots of hugs and kisses. I don't remember many hugs and kisses from Betty. I'm not sure exactly why we called our own mother Betty, but we did. Maybe it was because she didn't really feel like a mother and was way too young when she started having babies to accept motherhood, let alone the responsibility that came with the title. Really? What does a 15-year-old girl know about being a mother? There was no doubt in my mind that the way we lived was wrong. I could see that when I watched the tube. Beaver Cleaver's mom was always there when he awoke in the morning. He didn't have to wash his only set of school clothes every night, and he never got beatings. To say the least, TV was an escape from my world, a world that I'm amazed I survived. Tina, did you wash them dishes in the sink like I told you to? Yes. Who you talking to like that? What? Girl, I will beat your ass into bad health, she said as she hit me with the belt. Yes, Betty. Yes, Betty. I won't do it again, I cried. It seemed as though I was always getting in trouble. I'm not sure what I did or said to make her so mad at me, but I learned very quickly that the manner in which I spoke to my mother could cause me great pain. There were times when we didn't have the money to buy shoes every time we outgrew them. I had been wearing the same shoes for so long that the baby toes on both my feet became infected. I didn't dare say anything about it because that would have been another reason to get in trouble. So I stayed silent, and of course, Betty didn't notice. I'm not even sure what brought on the beating, but during the kicking and screaming that I did to try to get away from the belt that she used, my feet were hit several times. The skin was broken, and the infection spread over the next couple of days. It became harder to conceal, and Betty had to take me to the hospital. We're going to be here all damn day, she said. Mac and I never knew when Betty was going to come home. Sometimes she would drop by the apartment while we were in school or outside playing and leave food on the counter for us to fix for dinner. I learned later that Betty traded her welfare check for drugs. This was common practice among drug addicts, in addition to some other pretty scary things. The items that she dropped off usually did not involve cooking because that was just another one of the rules that Betty enforced. No cooking on the stove. After eating, I would quietly complete my chores and then watch TV with Mac until we fell asleep. Yeah, baby. Shh. Sighing. Yeah, baby, do it. Shh. They sleeping over there. Girl, girl, girl. Then there would be laughing. There would be laughter. I would lie as still as I could until they were finished. Even today, I can hear in my head the sexual moanings and groanings that they made. I don't know who the man was because he was never in the apartment when we awoke the next day. Sometimes Betty wasn't either. I can only remember one man in Betty's life when we lived with her. I can't remember his name, but I do remember how it was when he was with us. Betty was home a lot more often when the man lived with us. We even had a real Christmas when he was with us. He and Betty bought Mac and me gifts and put them in the coat closet until Christmas morning when the gifts were placed under the Christmas tree. Mac received a racing car and I received a beautiful doll. My doll had eyes made of blue glass and wore a lovely red laced dress with a matching umbrella. This was kind of common during that time frame. I'm sure many of you, if you're around my age, you probably remember that pretty doll with the matching umbrella. It was the most beautiful doll I had ever seen. My next memory is of the man as he sang goodbye to us. I can't remember his face, but I remember the words that he spoke to me as if it were yesterday. Tina, I gotta go now, he said sadly. I want you to know that I love you and will always be with you. If you need me, just look over your shoulder and I will be there. I remember looking over my shoulder so many times after he left. And of course, he was never there. It was just this thing that I did when things got really bad. Betty was sitting at the kitchen table, listening to the words the man spoke to me. She didn't say a word until he finished. Just get the fuck out, she screamed. Things went back to quote-unquote normal after that. There were many times, like I said, I looked over my shoulder to search for him, but of course he wasn't there. The man who said goodbye to me that day was the closest I had ever come to having a father. As a child, I never placed a lot of importance on having a father figure. I know that some of you who are reading this may think that sounds a little strange, but there were a lot of children in my neighborhood who didn't have a father. To grow up without one was the norm in the community where I lived. Most people didn't even bother to inquire about a male presence in the home. It was just kind of assumed that the mother was the lead of the household. No one else could be dependent on. If no one else could be dependent on, a child could depend on the mother. She was the one who struggled to make ends meet and tried to give her children a better life than she had. So what happens to the children when this is not the scenario? I can't remember a time in my childhood while I was living with my mom when I inquired about who and where my real father was. I'd been told that he lived in Virginia and was a friend of the family. It had been said that my skin tone was of some surprise at my birth. Since my mother was a dark-skinned black woman, it was not expected I would be born with such light skin. My father's family was very light-skinned and proud of it. The possibility of my skin being darker played a major role in my father's decision to walk away from his responsibilities, or at least that was what I was told. In the 1950s and 60s, having a dark complexion was not considered to be an asset by many blacks. The time of slavery was over, but the old feelings associated with variations in skin tone were still very much alive. As during slavery, light-skinned African Americans continue to be received in a totally different manner than by many whites and blacks alike. Most light-skinned individuals had less difficulty obtaining jobs and finding mates. A quote-unquote high yellow little girl such as myself would receive candy in the stores and would be told how cute she was. My skin tone was an embarrassment to me. The title, High Yellow, was by no means a compliment as far as I was concerned. With the title came implications that I considered myself better than the next person and that I wanted to be and would act as if I were white. My personal interests sure did not help the situation. My family and friends teased me as a result of my fondness for musicals and old movies and books. At the time, these were interests that were considered by many black folks to be reserved for the whites, at least the black folks in my neighborhood. The alienation that I experienced as a result of my early childhood, the chastisement associated with my skin tone, and the teasing that I endured because of my personal interests resulted in many sleepless nights for me. Not once did I think that I was in any way superior. In fact, I felt just the opposite. My skin tone was a constant reminder of the hardship my mother and other blacks before me had experienced. I found nothing appealing with regards to my complexion. As far as I know, my real father has never made an attempt to reach out to me. I'm not even sure that he considered me to be his daughter. Life has taught me that males can lay down with a woman, whisper sweet nothings in her ear, and leave her in a flash when she finds out that she is pregnant. In my eyes, a person such as this does not deserve to be called a man. He is little more than an animal answering a mating call. I did not spend my nights as a child or as an adult assessing my father's behavior. His actions kind of spoke for themselves. There is only one scenario that I have played in my mind over the years concerning my biological father. I've imagined what it would be like on the day that he and I stand face to face. And I'm sure that that day will come. There were plenty of times in my past when I'm sure that he should have and could have intervened, but for whatever reason, he chose not to. On that day that we meet, which hasn't happened in the 56 years that I've been on this earth, I pray that I will afford him the respect for being part of my creation, but nothing more. So that concludes Chapter 2, Betty. And I hope that you guys will like and follow and comment through the site. I'm really hoping that the readings will reach around the globe. And if you have questions or comments, please reach out to me. Again, my website is www.authortmbrown.com. I have a Facebook page, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm kind of all over the place. So please do feel free to reach out to me. My email address, tm.brown35@yahoo.com. Have yourself a great day, and I look forward to sharing more episodes of A Life Not My Own. Take care, everyone. Bye.